Hello everyone! I hope that you're having a fabulous Thursday. It is a very bright, very sunny day today here in Saranac Lake, New York. And I'm going to share with you today the story of how I totaled a U-Haul truck. And this just happened about 2 weeks ago, so it's still very, very fresh in my memory. I just got my apartment finally, and it's still kind of in shambles. But the whole story began when I got the keys to the apartment and was ready to move in on February 15th. So I had everything all packed and I was able to move like the small stuff, the boxes, with my own car, but I was going to need a truck and some guys to help me with the heavy stuff because I am a wimp. And it is just like way too bright standing in this window, so we're gonna find another spot to do this. There we go. So yeah, I called Madden's, which is a company here in Saranac Lake. They do moving, they have moving trucks, they do storage, towing, they're an auto body garage. They do it all. I gave them a call and they said, unfortunately, we don't have any moving trucks or guys available until Thursday at the very earliest. And I was like, crap, that's not gonna work. I really want to do this today because I have the daytime part of the day off, and I have to work at night. I have to work the rest of the week during the day. Really wanted to get this done today. He said, since we don't have anything that we can help you out with, I can unofficially recommend you give U-Haul a call. And so give me their number, gave them a call. They're located over in Lake Placid, which is about like 8 miles from here. The guy said, yeah, I have trucks. Come on over with your driver's license and your debit card and we'll set you up. So my boyfriend gave me a ride over there around lunchtime, checked out the U-Hauls, and decided that I was going to get, one of the smaller ones because I didn't have very much stuff. So I go into this place and immediately, I should mention the fact that this isn't just a U-Haul facility. I had been to this place once several years ago and I completely had forgotten about this. But this person that runs this U-Haul rental place, he also has like a kind of a hobby that he's turned into a business of restoring and remodeling old Tiffany lamps. They kind of have the really pretty stained glass and like the old steel frames and everything. They're gorgeous. But yeah, this whole shop is filled with them. It's like half Tiffany lamps, half U-Haul posters. It's a very odd combination. So we go in there and this man comes wheeling out of the back in a wheelchair. And he says, hi, can I help you? I said, hi, I'm the woman who just called a few minutes ago about getting a U-Haul. So we get all the paperwork started, and then he asks me as he's filling everything out, would you like to get the rental coverage for the truck? I said, yes, I would. My primary reason for it in that moment was because I knew somebody who had recently rented a car after totaling their own in a car accident. And somebody ended up backing into their car when they were at Price Chopper inside shopping. So they came outside and there was a huge dent in it. Completely not their fault. And yet, if they hadn't gotten the rental coverage on the car, they would have, been out the damages. So thank God they got that. I have an intruder. So we get everything all set up with the paperwork and all that. I do end up purchasing the rental coverage for the U-Haul, and he gives me the keys. We go to the lot where the U-Hauls are kept, find mine that matches the numbers on the key, and drive off. My boyfriend went ahead of me just to make sure if I had any problems driving the truck that he was there and we could like swap out or something. Got back to my house uneventfully. My brother and my father helped my boyfriend load the truck up with all of the heavy stuff that I couldn't possibly lift, like my bed, the girls' beds, which are a pair of bunk beds, some dressers, which are very, very heavy, and some bookcases, some tables, some things like that. We loaded the truck up and then drove it over to the apartment. They loaded everything up. I pretty much did door control because that's about all I was good for. I couldn't lift anything because I'm a little shrimpy wimp. Got the U-Haul unloaded, and by the time that we were all done with that, it was almost time for me to start getting ready for work. So I had to park the truck at the house, in the driveway, and leave it for the day. Now I should mention, this is not your average driveway. My driveway, or the driveway I was living in, is at a 45-degree angle. It is very, very steep. So steep that you usually have to get a running start, no matter what vehicle you're driving, just to get enough momentum to go up the driveway. I got a running start. I went up as fast as I possibly could. On my third attempt, I got about 3/4 of the way up with the U-Haul, decided to call it a night, and that's where I left it. I should also mention that it was about 22 below that day, with a wind chill somewhere around like -35, -38, very cold. We didn't factor in that the next day was supposed to be a very dramatic warm-up. So I parked the truck, went to bed that night. It was still 20 below. I wake up the next morning and it was getting warmer. I had every intention of doing some moving at night when I got done with work, but I was so utterly exhausted that I just left the truck there, went to bed, got up the next morning, came over, started doing some more packing. And when my mom was going to give my 9-year-old a lift to school, I hear her scream from the outside. You know, if somebody screams from outside, it's bad, no matter what it is. My first instinct when I hear her voice was something horrible just happened to my 9-year-old or her. And then I hear the following sentence: "Danielle, your U-Haul just went off the cliff." That might have been one of the most terrifying things I've ever heard in my life. I bolted barefoot outside to see the U-Haul, sure enough, off of the cliff. The tires were in the air. It was off of the ground. The only things supporting it at all were 2 tiny little trees that were about 3 or 4 inches thick. That was it. And it was a very steep hill. It was about a 15-20 foot fall. If the trees gave, which I felt they inevitably would, because it's a very, very heavy truck and that's all that was holding it up, it was going to go smashing down on the street 20 feet below and very likely hurt or kill people should there be anybody driving by on either lane. My first instinct was to call 911 because I thought this is a very bad situation and it could get worse. People could get hurt or killed here. And I can't do anything. But then I thought, if I call the police or 911, they're just going to end up sending a tow truck here ultimately anyway, because that's what needs to happen. I decided to just skip the middleman and call the tow company. So I called Madden's again. And I was like, "Hi, I'm the girl that called about a moving truck. Well, now I'm calling you because I got a moving truck and I need it towed." The guy kind of had a little chuckle. I did too. He said, "Okay, so what has happened?" I said, "Well, the U-Haul fell off of a cliff and it's now being supported by 2 small trees. I really need you guys to hurry because I'm afraid that it's going to crash down in the street." They showed up, I'm not even exaggerating, like 60 seconds later. They're about a half a mile down the road, and I feel like they hung up the phone, got in their tow truck, and just came right over. Because the way I was explaining it, I thought, it's going to fall. They looked at it, and it was starting to freezing rain by that point. It was starting to get really, really warm. It was already in the 40s, going up, up, up. Everything was melting. My driveway was a mess. It was very slick. The guys had a very difficult time getting up it with their tow truck. They took one look at the situation and said, "No, we're going to need another truck." And not just like swap out the trucks. They need another truck to do the job, a total of 2 trucks. Crazy. So they get all their, towing stuff in order. They had to get all kinds of equipment, blocks, chains, everything ready to tow this giant U-Haul. It took them more than 2 hours. It took these 2 guys and 2 trucks like 2 hours to get this done. It was insane. And the whole time I was watching this, I was placing phone calls, trying to, make sure everything was going to be okay with U-Haul. I called the guy in Lake Placid first. He had never had an incident like this. He never had like an accident before with one of his trucks, so he didn't know what to do. He said he was going to have to call the U-Haul national lines. And I thought, you know what, I'm just going to call them myself. I called them, I explained the situation. I said, I got the insurance. I don't know how this works with the tow. And this woman that I was speaking with, Yolanda, told me, "We actually would have gotten you a tow truck if you had called us first, but since you called the tow truck, we're not sure what to do." She said, "I believe what would happen is you would give the receipt, you would pay out of pocket and then give the receipt that the tow guy gives you, you give that to the guy in Lake Placid, and he should reimburse you. I thought, okay, that makes a certain amount of sense. And the tow guy also said that that's usually what happens in these kind of things, that they pay him and then they get reimbursed, separately, independent of him. He just needed money that day for what he had done, and that makes perfect sense. I gave him my credit card, and he ran it, so I had to pay out of pocket for that. Can you see that? $324. That's insane. So yeah, I had to pay out of pocket $324, which I was not very excited about. And they gave me that invoice. I called the guy in my class and he said, I'm gonna need to make some calls. It's gonna take a couple of days for me to figure out. So, okay, whatever. A couple of days goes by, I don't hear anything, and then I see in my bank account 2 separate charges. One for $54, the other one for $150. And I kind of flipped my shit a little bit. Like, why? I called the U-Haul national number and they said, well, the $54 was for having the truck for the day, the insurance, and the mileage. I was like, okay, well, what's the $150? And they said, that's a deductible for using the Safe Move insurance. Okay. Well, when am I going to get my $324 back? He said, ma'am, we don't do reimbursements like that. You're going to need to talk to the insurance company about this. So they gave me the name of the insurance company. I called them, spoke to a guy named David there, and he said, we would actually only cover something if you were in a motor vehicle accident with the U-Haul. And I said, I was. It fell off a cliff. It's like, no, I mean, if you were driving it and something happened, say you hurt people or damaged property or other vehicles. I was like, well, that's not what happened, but it still got into an accident regardless. So he tells me, well, I'm sorry, but there's nothing we can do here. We would only be talking to you if you had injured other parties or other property. I was like, shit, this guy isn't going to help me either. He said, you're going to need to talk to U-Haul for reimbursement. They as a company are responsible for reimbursing you, not us. Okay, so I call U-Haul again. I explain the situation, and she says, okay, I'm going to need to take a case file for this and pass it along to my manager and see what we can come up with. She takes all my information. It's like a 20-minute phone call detailing absolutely everything about the accident and what had happened, what I paid, everything. Again, a couple of days goes by and I don't hear anything. So I'm thinking, well, this kind of sucks. And then I get an email, a very unexpected email, where it was a man from Albany saying he had looked over the situation and realized that they needed to make this right with me. I had paid them $204 to U-Haul, and then I had paid $324 to tow their U-Haul to safety. I didn't have to do that. The bitchy lady on customer service told me that I should have had U-Haul call a tow truck. But it's like, there must be situations where people get into accidents with U-Hauls and they either don't have the time or the means to call U-Haul first. If you get into a car accident, the police are going to call a tow truck, or sometimes a tow truck just shows up or somebody calls one. So calling U-Haul at the very first step, I thought that was a little ridiculous, as far as they can't get out of owing me money just because I didn't call them first. Well, this guy in this email was saying they were going to make this right with me, and he was going to give me a full refund. So he was going to refund the $204. He wasn't going to give me $324, but I was going to be out the difference of like 120 something bucks. Not a big deal. I thought at the end of the day, I had a $54 for charge for U-Haul anyway, and it's almost like the accident in and of itself just cost me another 50 something bucks. I forgot to mention that when I talked to the insurance guy, he actually told me that he had received the information about the accident from what had happened, and I had totaled the U-Haul. Totaled it. The back end was smashed in. The stair that you step up onto in the back was completely pounded in. The bumper, the top of the truck was smashed in. The door it didn't move anymore. It was rendered useless. Fortunately, the undercarriage of the truck was fine, and that's the only reason that I was able to drive it at all, was because the guys that did the towing, they're also auto mechanics, and they took a look at it, said, she's fine to drive. It's all damage to the back and to the box. So in all, they did make it right with me. They did end up fixing the problem. I was out, you know, the $50 or whatever for the accident, but considering it was a $40,000 truck, it could have been so much worse. That man, David, that I spoke with, he told me that he has seen this kind of things just financially destroy people. People who are almost half my age. Like, you know, they rent something and they don't think about paying that extra 10, 15, 20 bucks for the insurance because they just think, you know, I don't really want to spend that on at the time. I want to spend it on lunch or something. They don't realize that something could happen, something completely out of their control. And you get all these cocky people who are like, oh, I'm such a good driver. And, you know, I consider myself a pretty good driver too, but I still ended up totaling a U-Haul. So that's my story about how I totaled a U-Haul. And I think I'm gonna do a part 2 of this video because less than 24 hours after I totaled the U-Haul, I totaled my own car. Again, not my fault. Completely not my fault. But that's still a very amusing story. And I do say amusing because even though I lost that car, I was kind of done with that car. And when that happened to it, I was like, this is almost sort of a mixed blessing. So yeah, I'll be making a storytime video about that too because that one's just too funny not to share. But anyway, I hope everybody's having a fabulous Thursday. I had to show everybody the lamp. I was talking about the U-Haul facility and the fact that the guy restores and rebuilds these old lamps. This is my turtle lamp. My mom bought him for me for a birthday present because I just absolutely fell in love with it. I couldn't even decide. They had these in every single color and just so many gorgeous lamps in there. I use them as a night light and I love him. Personally, I recommend that place to anybody, especially if you know somebody who likes these kinds of things. It's the U-Haul place in Lake Placid, and the guy does this. He makes these, and they're so cool.